So, hello everybody, first of all, and welcome to the webinar. This is Naviton's first real webinar in a technical subject. We're going to be trying to put these on every couple of maybe twice a month or so, and be discussing relevant technical topics for businesses. This week, or today, we'll be discussing a couple common business email and collaboration issues, and the way that Google Apps in particular can solve those issues. And it's important to draw the distinction between Google Apps and the Google Apps Premier Edition, or it's also called Google Apps for Business. We'll be discussing the Business Edition, and anybody can sign up for a Google Apps account at google.com/apps, I believe. But businesses, there's a fee associated with that, and it's an enhanced feature set, and we'll be going over that today. So, a quick overview of the topics that we'll be discussing. First, we want to look at Google Apps from the perspective of an end user, just a general overview. And then we'll look at the specific challenges that businesses face with email and collaboration. And these are challenges that we believe Google Apps is well suited to address. It's important to have a basic understanding of the platform. So after looking at these different scenarios, we'll look at how Google Apps is able to deliver on a solution, and I think that understanding the platform is key to that whole discussion. And finally, we'll take a quick look at the migration and the cost of Google Apps migrating from different existing systems if you elect to move to Google Apps. And also, we will briefly touch on Microsoft Exchange and how it fits into the picture. I know many of you probably already are familiar with Exchange or are running it, and how we'll discuss how Google Apps fits into this picture, and also how Microsoft Exchange can be used in a hosted manner similar to Google Apps if that's a requirement. So let's begin by going into this first step, the overview here, and just look at how Google Apps works from an outside perspective. So I'm sure that everybody has probably heard of Google Apps, and to the end user, Google Apps provides four main services. Business email, which is centralized, hosted, business-grade email. This is email that has your custom domain at the end, so pbeach@naviton.com. That's a custom domain with my company. It adds a lot of credibility, and that's the first piece, the business email. After that, we have collaboration tools. And many businesses don't have true collaboration tools, and Google Apps includes these, so it's kind of a neat feature, and as we'll see later, it's a pretty low price to be getting all this. So with Google Docs, you can distribute a document to a coworker, for example, and not have any fragmentation issues that arise from sending attachments back and forth, and we'll go into that in detail later. The third piece is basic productivity tools. And many of you have heard of Google Docs, which is a suite of web-based Office applications like Microsoft Office, but kind of lighter weight, and they all run in your web browser. And this presentation itself was actually created in the Google Docs presentation tool, just to give you an idea of what that program's capable of. You can see up here, I don't know if you can see, but this URL up here is docs.google.com. So this is all hosted in that platform. So that's the productivity tools. The final piece is a development platform, and while it's still in its infancy, it offers an interesting alternative to developing an application, for example, that would run on a Windows server in your office, in the sense that it could be running in the cloud alongside of your apps, alongside of your email and your collaboration tools, and interface with all the information that you have there. And while many people aren't taking advantage of this today, it's a good thing to get your foot in the door of having that cloud-based development capability. And together, these tools can help businesses solve common email and collaboration challenges. So let's move to the second part of the webinar, and we'll look at a few of those scenarios. So the first issue that arises from, it comes from traditional email, and this here is a diagram of your traditional email provider today. And this, you could refer to it as a POP or an IMAP email solution. You may have heard that. But in this type of solution, email comes from an email provider. It's represented by this cloud. But the communication is one way. As you can see from these arrows, they're just pointing in one direction. There's no mechanism for communicating a message read or an opened message back to the server. The issue typically presents itself in one of three problems. Email will arrive at only one of your devices. For example, you might open an email on your smartphone early in the day, and you'll return home at night and find that the same email does not come to your desktop because it's been received through that one-way mechanism to one device, and once it's there, it's there. Another common scenario is that the email is read on one device, but it shows up as unread on another device even though you read it, because again, it's one-way communication. The device read the email, but there was no way to tell the server that that email had been read, and then when you look at the email on your smartphone, you could see that it was read. There's no mechanism. And the third and final issue is that you're restricted to one computer or to webmail use only. To avoid those issues, you might only use your desktop to do your work email because you don't want to have problems with receiving emails. So that's kind of the problems that arise from traditional email. And I want to quickly unmute everybody and just see if there's any questions. I have to first figure out how to do that. Let's see. So we can see that traditional email is not well suited for businesses where employees will use multiple devices to access their email, which brings us to the second challenge, which involves more issues with mobility. And the second issue is that traditional email solutions don't scale well to mobile environments. And again, you can see from this diagram, it's similar to the last one, that many of the issues are coming from this one-way communication where messages only come to one device. But in this case, the issue is further complicated by the presence of mobile devices. Certain devices are just not compatible with the network. For this left-hand device here, for example. Moving to the right, we see that certain platforms are more expensive than others. For example, you might pay more for a BlackBerry or an Android device to be able to have that business email. You might be paying for software or for a premium monthly subscription. This third device has a partially supported platform, which is another common issue, where you'll get your email on your mobile phone, but there won't really be any way to get your work contacts on your phone. And the final device here, you're left with only really one device that's at a normal price that you can actually use, if you're lucky. And to summarize, you're left with three issues. You have incomplete and partial support, you're paying for additional features, and you have compatibility only with specific devices. To have that true access anywhere capability with your email, you need webmail that works with any type of device with through a browser, for example. But most email hosts don't provide this. Again, if you have any questions about that or want to input anything, please use the chat feature or raise your hand. And I'm checking now to see if there are any questions. It does not look like there are. So cool. All right, moving on to the next slide. This is the third problem that companies are facing, and this is the final scenario that we're going to discuss before going into the actual meat of the Google Apps. The third problem is that companies are facing a lack of collaboration tools that are readily available. And the main problem is that many of them are just too expensive or too overproduced for a small or medium-sized business. They're maybe completely standalone, meaning that they don't run on the same platform as your email, and therefore they don't have all the contacts and calendar and email information ready available to them. And really, for a collaboration tool to be effective, it should be integrated with your email and your contacts and your calendar so that you can stick stuff into each other's schedules and work on stuff together. So you're left with a couple problems. Collaboration tools are, like I said, expensive and standalone. These platforms contain many unused functions and features because you're simply not at the same scale that the program was designed for. And most of the platforms don't include offerings for mobile platforms. Really, your team would be stuck using their desktop or a specific device. So this collaboration can lead to something that an issue that many people are familiar with that arises from a lack of collaboration is document fragmentation. And let me illustrate what I mean. So let's walk through it. This is a visual illustration of that fragmentation. For example, you could be working with a couple colleagues on a document, and here's what you would do today. You would first come up with a document, a first draft, and then you'd send it out to your coworkers. And they would each edit it and send it back to you in an email as an attachment. And everybody's going to use their own naming convention, for example, draft, O1, or final. And then your responsibility would be to take those and combine it into some sort of meaningful version 2. And, that might be the second to last stage, and then you go out for one more final draft, and again you're faced with the same more fragmentation and more combining. And then you always have one person who, you know, is on vacation or something and misses that first draft, and then you'll get something that's even a little bit more off the mark, and again you have to combine it together into some sort of meaningful final draft. And this is a painful process, but it's something that a lot of businesses do every day or frequently. And this type of collaboration is hard, and it shouldn't be hard to work on a team. So that very question, or that very issue, is what is the heart of the commonly held mentality today, that collaboration might not be worth it. And if this is the method being used, I would have to agree. So all three of these issues that I've discussed with email and with mobility and with collaboration, Google Apps can help to solve these issues, and let's look at how. So with Google Apps, you get a couple of great tools that help. The first is that email syncs to all of your devices, and it's true two-way email data synchronization. If you get an email and you have Google Apps on and you get an email on your smartphone, if you go back on your desktop, you'll see that email. If you had sent a response, you'll see your response. If there were any attachments, those attachments will be synchronized across devices. This is because when you read an email, or when you do anything with an email, that activity is sent back to the server, and the server distributes that activity out to all the devices. The second feature of Google Apps is that almost all devices are compatible. If you have access to the internet and the device came out in the last 10 years, if it's something with a web browser, you'll be able to use it with Google Apps. There's no extra fee for different platforms. There's only one flat fee per user, which we'll get into in a later slide. We'll get into the actual pricing. Also, if you don't have Outlook or some other email client that you want to get your email through, you can always use Google Apps webmail service. It's called Gmail, and many people use it with an @gmail.com email address, but you can get it completely customized for your custom company. The third piece is that collaboration tools are built in, and the keystone of those collaboration tools is definitely Google Docs, as we discussed earlier, but there are also other applications. For example, Google Sites, which allows you to create not only a normal website for your company, many of you already have that, but you can also create internal intranet type websites that could be used, for example, by a sales team. You could put maybe the 6 documents that you use to sell, and always have those available when you're on the field. And the final piece of Google Apps is that development platform that I discussed way back in the beginning. Again, it's an awesome feature to have your foot in the door with. So again, if you have any questions about those features that are included, please don't hesitate to raise your hand or ask a question right in the software there. And again, I'll be circling around at the end for additional questions. So let's look at how the Google Apps platform delivers these solutions, because I think it's important for its educational value, as well as understanding moving to the platform and connecting to it. Google Apps is built on a cloud computing model, and many people have heard of cloud computing, and this is basically what it is. All of your data and information is stored in this cloud called the cloud, and it's basically just web servers and infrastructure that are owned by possibly a third party in this case. And the advantages to this type of setup are numerous. First of all, you can take advantage of the scale and the pace of innovation of the provider, in this case Google, in the sense that they have a huge economy, and that increases the reliability and reduces the cost to you. You no longer have to pay to have a physical box in your office that you're paying for maintenance on. With the Google Apps platform, you're storing your information in somebody else's. You're basically leasing the ability to access their huge infrastructure. And don't misunderstand what I'm saying, though. You still own all of your data, and it's all still totally private to your company. But you can see here that the communication is two-way, and it interfaces primarily through a web browser with any type of device that you have. So your emails, your contacts, your calendar information are all going through two-way communication with the Google Apps Information Cloud out to your devices. And it's interesting to see that this same platform that's enabling your email to be so effective is the same platform that's enabling collaboration to be effective. And you can see here that the Google Apps cloud is storing this bizdoc.doc file, a Microsoft Word document. And all of you can work, in this case it's three different users. You can think of these little blocks at the bottom as three different users. It could be any number of users, but they're all accessing the same document up in the cloud through their web browser in any of their type of device, either a laptop, a netbook, a mobile device, a desktop, for example. And they're editing the document, but they're editing the same copy, and they can simply log into their Google Docs account, edit the document, save it, and now everybody else can see that edit and improve upon it. So this makes for much more effective collaboration, and it's really worth it in this sense compared to the document fragmentation method that I went over earlier. And with that, I'd like to transition to what and how you can get Google Apps and the cost associated with that. Google Apps is available through Navitend at $48 per user per year, which works out to $4 per month per user. And this is the full-fledged Premier edition of Google Apps with access to all the tools and applications that are available that I've gone over in this presentation and many others. We also offer discounted rates on other services that they supply. For example, if you're a municipality or other government type of setup, you might need email archiving, which is also called message discovery, and we offer that. And I did mention that if you signed up for the webinar and attended, you would be entitled to 1 free month of the service, and I haven't forgotten that. If you're interested, just send me an email, pbeach@navitend.com. That offer expires on the 31st of July. So again, please don't hesitate to ask me any questions. We are drawing to the end of the webinar, and I don't want to have anybody with any unanswered questions or anything. You can either raise your hand in the webinar software or type a question right in the text chat feature. So now let's just let's look at the second part, and this is probably the bigger part of the cost associated with Google Apps, is moving to Google Apps. A lot of people get nervous about that prospect, and that's totally understandable. Your email and your contacts are, two of the cornerstones of any business, and nobody likes to change what's already familiar, even if it's partially broken, the system. You still would like to stick with it. But the benefits are really worth the relatively small cost of migration, and let's go over what that migration entails. First, there's a base setup. And this is the big ticket items. This is changing your email records to reflect Google Apps servers. For example, that's changing it so that maybe if you have an email address at yahoo.com now that you're using, we would be changing it so that you could have your email be coming to at mycompany.com instead. The second part is to set up an administrative backend, and that's used to create new users, set up groups, manage permissions, and other tasks, stuff that you would administrative items. The third thing I wanted to mention is that there's typically zero downtime in this base setup, and that's a key issue because a lot of people, that's an important thing, not to have any downtime when you're moving email providers. However, it is wise to expect if you were to move, to expect maybe an hour or so of downtime while those DNS rules, to get technical for a second, are going through the internet. It can take a certain amount of time for those records to fully be applied throughout the entire world, and you might have a few bounced emails during that period. After this first step, you move on to the device setup phase. Each individual device, for example a smartphone or a desktop, must be configured to get the email from Google Apps. Typically this process only takes a few moments for a desktop and even less for a mobile device. And some devices don't really even need to be configured. For example, if you're going to be accessing Google Apps strictly through your web browser, you can do that just by typing in google.com/apps and just typing in your username and password, which you'll have access to, and you'll be able to go right into everything straight through your web browser. You won't even have to configure the device. An interesting point, just to mention, I touched on it briefly earlier, as part of this device setup, there's no limit on the amount of devices that you can have. for example, I have an iPhone, I have a work computer, I have a laptop, and people in the office have iPads and Zoom tablets, and they're all configured to access your their Google Apps information, and my Google Apps information. And you know, we don't have Google Apps here in the office, but there's no associated fee with having additional devices. It's just per user. If you don't need any email or contact or calendar data, any old email migrated to the Google Apps platform, for example, if you were a new company, or in our experience, we've actually found that many companies, when they're switching email providers, they realize that it's a good time to clean out a lot of junk, because they realize that stuff that they've been holding on to, emails and stuff, really they don't need for certain users maybe, or for certain email accounts. But if you're somebody like that, then your setup might end here, or this next step might not be as involved, and that's the data migration. Obviously, if you're a new business, you don't have any data to migrate. If you're somebody who's trying to clean up shop and get out some junk, this is going to be a smaller step. But this is the most time-consuming and intensive part of the setup. And depending on the existing email solution, the process will be more or less involved, but it's not a difficult process, and I mean, we're experts in this, so we can move whatever you're currently on, we can move you from that to the Google Apps platform. And the migration includes email, contacts, and calendars, but we can also migrate any other data or documents that you might need up to the cloud. And just before we reach the closing slide, where I just one more time ask you guys for any questions, I just wanted to mention Microsoft Exchange and how it integrates with the platform. Okay, so I see that there are a couple of questions, so let's just quickly take a break here, and let me go and see if I can make this window bigger. Okay, what are the first question here? What are the major differences between Google Apps and Google Apps Premier? That is a good question, and I mentioned that we were discussing Google Apps Premier. The main difference is that Google Apps Premier is for business. And the reason being is that if you sign up for Google Apps, like I said, anybody can sign up for Google Apps on the homepage for free. You'll be getting a Google Apps account with access to all of these features. However, you don't get a custom company domain name. You don't get customized web portals for your company. For example, when I send an email from my Gmail account, my email address is philip.beach.3@gmail.com. Now that's a free Gmail Google Apps account. As a business owner, I wouldn't want to have an email address at gmail.com. That wouldn't do anything to help my credibility. So I would purchase Google Apps Premier Edition for $50 for myself for the whole year, and that would give me access to that at mycompanyname.com. So I would be philip.beach.3@mycompany.com. That's really what you're paying for, is that custom domain, and it's being coupled with the Google Apps platform, which is the real advantage here. And then you can use everything available in the Google Apps platform across your company, across every employee. So every employee is going to be able to talk to every other employee in the company. It's creating like a whole infrastructure, kind of like an Exchange server would do. So that's the difference. Google Apps, it's really like a one user deal, and Google Apps Premier, it's for a company. So that's kind of it. I'm going to circle back to these other questions at the end. I want a real fast touch at Hosted Exchange and Microsoft Exchange in general and how it fits in. A lot of people know what Exchange is, and a lot of people are going to want to stick with Exchange. So we are mentioning that there is a solution called Hosted Exchange that is basically putting Exchange in the cloud. Like Google Apps, all of your data will be stored on an infrastructure with very high stability and a high automatic updates and everything. You wouldn't be paying for maintenance or for an in-house server. However, you're getting Microsoft Exchange, which a lot of people like, and some people have a requirement, to a software requirement or some sort of compliance issue where they need Exchange. We can accommodate that as well. The thing is, the one thing about it is that it is more expensive than Google Apps in general, and significantly more expensive. It might be cheaper than running it. It is cheaper than running your own Microsoft Exchange server in-house, but it falls in between that and Google Apps. Google Apps is definitely a more cost-effective solution. So I just wanted to mention that. So that is the conclusion of the webinar, and I'll try to circle around to these questions here that are coming in. The next question is that please discuss data security and if there is a reduced need for data backup using cloud computing. Also, what about spam filtering on email? Is it included in the email service? That's a couple questions in one. So first, let's look at data security. There's really no need for a backup with Google Apps. There's no need for mail contacts. Anything that you're putting in that platform is going to be safe and secure. Google uses a redundant platform, meaning that your data is distributed across hundreds of servers, probably thousands. I mean, who knows how many servers Google has. But that data is going to be distributed in such a way that if one server were to die, it wouldn't even scratch the surface of the amount of redundancy that there is. So you don't ever, in theory, you should never have to worry about backing up any of that data. What you can do if you're nervous and you want to have a copy of that data is, for example, use Microsoft Office and use Microsoft Outlook to access your Google Docs, which I've touched on briefly. It is possible to use Outlook to get your Google Docs information if you want to, if you're familiar with Outlook. You can use that and it'll pull down a copy of everything into Outlook, so if your internet goes down, for example, you can still access your Google email. Spam filtering is included. I'm just going to leave it at that. It's great spam filtering. It's powered by Postini, which is excellent. It's the name of the game these days. And it is included in that $50 per year. Are there levels of security available on the documents for a Premier client that would allow / restrict certain users or user groups from accessing groups of documents? The short answer is yes. Like I mentioned, I touched briefly on setting up an administrative backend as part of the setup, and in that administrative backend is the ability to add and create users as well as groups, and you can create documents and share documents based on group and user permissions. So the system has been designed, and that touches back on the other question regarding the major differences between Google Apps and Google Apps Premier, is that you are getting access to additional security features and group permissions, etc. Just to make it clear, there is a version of Google Apps available. I'm not sure if it's still available, but for a time it was possible to get Google Apps for Business for 10 users for free, I believe, and that offer might still be available, and I'd recommend looking into that, but just going to leave it at that. The next question here is, are there gigabyte limits on Google Apps for the $48 a year? What are any costs for expanding the basic space? And that is a good question, and I will try to look it up really fast now. I believe that the limit is so high that it's pretty ridiculously high. I think it's, I want to say it's over 9 gigabytes per mailbox or something. I think there is a limit, and there is a fee, I think, with increasing that limit. But let me follow up with you, the person who asked that question. I'm going to write it down, and I will follow up with you specifically on that question. So I think I've answered all the questions. If anybody has any others, please ask, and I will circle back around. Okay, here's a question. Is it possible to install other applications into the space? Other applications by meaning, let me answer that in 2 steps. First, there are many applications that Google develops and are available, and they don't need to be installed. They're part of the program. Google Maps, Google Docs, Google Gmail, Google Maps. There's quite a few of them. But in order to add your own apps, you will have to have custom applications written. Right now, for example, QuickBooks or another application like that, they're not available directly into the Google Apps platform. But that's what I was touching on earlier with that development, with those development tools. That is what's going to be happening in the future. It's only a matter of time. And I think Google Apps right now is definitely the leader of the pack in terms of cloud-based email collaboration and application framework development. And I think that into the future we'll start to see offerings similar to QuickBooks. So I hope that answers the question. Right now, so is it possible? Yes. Is it possible without hiring a developer maybe to put something that, if you needed it right now? No, you'd probably need to hire a developer to get exactly what you needed right now. But as we go into the future, I think more and more people are going to be calling for companies like QuickBooks to create solutions for Google Apps, and I think that'll be happening. So, like I said, if anybody has any other questions, I'll be here for probably till around 10:45. Otherwise, if you need to go, I know it's been about 30 minutes now, so feel free to head out. If you need to verbally ask a question, just let me know on the chat feature or raise your hand and I'll unmute you. And overall, I think it's been an awesome presentation, and I want to thank you all for attending. So send me an email, and I'll be following up with everybody tomorrow. You can ask me any additional questions.